every time I hear her speak in a public forum or get the chance to chat with her, I come out feeling like I am totally lazy and I need to do 500 times more stuff just to have a near maybe half the impact that she does in the world, and that is Callie Broaddus. So Callie is the founder and executive director of Reserva, the Youth Land Trust. I'll bring this up in a banner on the bottom of the screen. And Callie does incredible work making the world's first youth-funded biological reserve. She is all about youth empowerment and making sure people, no matter what their age, feel like they can have a positive impact on the planet. So Callie, thanks for coming in after your flight. You got caffeinated. We had a little change of our schedule. I'm so glad I get to host you, and welcome into the BioFest.
Thanks for coming back on to hang out with me.
Absolutely. Honestly, it is the middle of the night, midnight. Last year we did programs like 2 a.m. You just say the word, Joe, I'll come on in and have this chance. But I'm so excited to hear about your work and share with our audience around the world today what you do, people that might not have heard of Reserva before. So please do dive in and tell us more.
Awesome. Thanks. And I am going to share my screen. Do I just hit share down here?
Yep. Share on the bottom, and then it gives you a bunch of options, and you can pick screen share of those options. And then pick the entire screen. It's like a 7-step process. It's very exciting.
All right. Sounds good. Well, that's a tough act to follow, but Rodrigo really cued this up well with that closing message that we need to focus on preserving the remaining habitat that we have left in the world. And today I am going to be talking about one particular place that, if you've seen me talk before, you know what it is, Dracula Youth Reserve, which, as Jesse mentioned, is the world's first entirely youth-funded nature reserve and part of a really important corridor that is in the northwest of Ecuador. So can someone tell me if I'm sharing my screen?
You are, and then when you go to the slide deck, I'll bring it up full. It'll be perfect.
Is this it?
Oh, it's gorgeous. Look at that.
Okay, awesome. So today I want to focus on Dracula Youth Reserve. This is our spot in the northwest of Ecuador. It's exactly on the Colombian border. Actually, where the drone is in this photo is pretty much the Colombian border looking south. This area is a reserve that my organization, Reserva, the Youth Land Trust, and the young people that I've been lucky enough to work with from around the world, we're helping to build this wildlife corridor that's been being assembled for the last 8 or so years. And one of the biggest challenges that faces the future of this area is gold mining exploration. So I want to show you today why that is incongruous with a livable future in this area for local people, indigenous people, and why it cannot be allowed to continue. So Dracula Reserve, it's not named after the vampire. It's named after this genus of orchid. Now, this is actually a new species of Dracula orchid that is found only in Dracula Reserve, only on one mountain range. We call it a crest of a mountain in Dracula Reserve. And it gets its name for these crazy long sepals that Dracula actually means little dragon in, I think, Latin or Greek. And it's just a really spectacular orchid. So this reserve, this corridor that's being assembled, has a high density of these incredible flowers and a really high richness in orchids overall. So up here at the very, very tippy top of Ecuador, if you look on the left-hand map, the borders aren't very visible, but this is Ecuador. We're looking at the very top on the western slopes of the Andes mountain chain. So down to the east, you'll see that super flat-looking area. That's the Amazon. When you hit the Andes mountains, you get an entirely different ecosystem, or set of ecosystems. And there's a whole different set of ecosystems on the western slopes that go toward the Pacific than there are in the eastern slopes that go toward the Amazon. So we're in the western slopes of the Andes in an area called the Chocó Cloud Forest. And on the right-hand side, you can see this is some of the plots that are either existing or potentially future plots of Dracula Reserve. And the little colored lines are a transect that we completed last year, and I'll show you a little bit of that, connecting that entire ecosystem. So the reason this reserve exists is not just because of the orchids, but because of the incredible biodiversity and endemism, which is a term that means species that are living in this area live only there. I would say the vast majority of the species you find in this landscape, you will only find there. You might find close relatives of these amphibians, these orchids, maybe 20 kilometers to the south, but many of them have very restricted home ranges. So the reserve was identified by our partner, Fundación Ecominga, which is an Ecuadorian group. They are the owners of this land, and they hire the local and indigenous people who are patrolling, who are researching, and helping to be the guardians of this landscape. Ecominga identified this area because of its orchids, but their research has shown that when you have a high level of endemism of orchids, a high level of orchid species, that correlates to a high level of endemism with other species as well. So just on this screen here, that pink orchid, that's the most endangered plant in all of Ecuador, with fewer than 100 plants in the wild. That only lives on Dracula Reserve. The other two orchids on the screen are new species, still not yet described to science. The frog on the left, that's a new species that some of you may recognize, because we did a big youth species naming competition a couple years ago. And on the bottom right, another new species. So it's not only incredibly rich and endemic, but also holds many unknown species to science. It's an area that is very little studied. There are over 400 species of birds in Dracula Reserve. We have the plate-billed mountain toucan. This is kind of the cover girl of the Birds of Ecuador book. If you're a birder, you may have seen it. Fantastic bird. And as I flick through these images, I just want to show you the level of richness that exists on this reserve, and why it's impossible to deforest this area without causing extinction. So on the upper left of the screen, you'll see a little icon, NT. That means near threatened. That's the IUCN threat category on the IUCN red list for this species. And you'll see that little icon change throughout this presentation. On the left, we have that same new species of Dracula orchid, and on the right, the critically endangered Phragmipedium fishery. These are both orchids that can only be found in Dracula Reserve. Orchids are incredibly susceptible to environmental changes, and with the increase of mining exploration in the area, these species are increasingly under threat. We also have those previous pictures are of fairly large orchids, maybe an inch to an inch and a half in diameter. These are only a couple millimeters. So the vast majority of orchid species that we have in Dracula Reserve are micro orchids. They're itty bitty. So this is a new species that we just came across in March, or a likely new species that we just came across on our March expedition. And it's just a couple millimeters wide. And orchids like this are usually pollinated by absolutely tiny creatures, like fruit flies, for example, can pollinate things like this, mosquitoes, or micro wasps. And so these orchids tend to have a high level of endemism. You might find this orchid on one single mountain of this entire area. I mean, you might not find it a kilometer to the east. So with the level of endemism that we have, as you lose forest, you lose species, because you're losing those tiny little things that have such restricted home ranges. Some of the stars of the reserve are these two. This on the left is Atelopus koine. It's a critically endangered harlequin toad, and there are, we believe, we've only identified about 25 individuals living on Dracula Reserve, and this is the only place where this species is protected. It's one of the only places where it's known to be existing. So these frogs, these toads, are incredibly susceptible to environmental changes as well, especially water contamination. And one of the biggest problems with gold mining is water contamination. So in order to save this species, we really need to make sure that mining is not allowed to continue in this area. On the right is Colomai. This is a female. The females have these amazing yellow masks, and these are much more toady looking. You can see that warty skin. Colomai is an endangered species. It was thought to be extinct for a long time and was rediscovered in Dracula Reserve. And the only known population is protected here. We also have Pristomantis frogs. This is Pristomantis latoclavius on the left, a vulnerable species. Glass frogs, Centralana heloderma here on the right, a vulnerable species. We have new species. This is a potentially new species of Boleta glossa, which is an arboreal salamander that breathes through its skin. It has no lungs. It also has the fastest tongue in the animal kingdom. And they are the cutest things. I think they're the cutest things in the forest. They have these tiny little padded feet, and they walk almost in slow motion until all of a sudden they decide they want to go somewhere, and they're just off. They're really, really cute. We have fantastic snakes in this area. So on the right, Elythrolamprus viti, it looks scary because it has all the red, but it's a completely harmless snake with a very restricted home range. That DD on the top right, that means data deficient. So the IUCN, which is the body that tells you internationally, hey, this is a globally threatened species or not. The IUCN is saying we don't have enough data to determine what the conservation status of this animal is. And so if you don't have enough data, then how do you know if it's decreasing or how your conservation metrics are working? So to have this species on our reserve is a really good thing for the species. On the left, Dipsas elegans, a vulnerable species. It's an elegant snail eater, and it's just a fantastic, really, really sweet snake. And we use these snakes when we're lucky enough to find them. Often if we're in an area where we're working with local people as well, we'll use them as sort of ambassadors to show local people that snakes aren't all venomous. They're not all dangerous. So these are also great ambassadors for wildlife locally. This is a photo by Sean Grazer, gourmet biologist on Instagram, of the brown-headed spider monkey, a critically endangered species and one of the top 25 most endangered primates in the world. We are protecting their highest known elevation range, habitat range. They're more often found in the lower elevations, and we're protecting an area that they seem to come up to feed on trees in Dracula Reserve. We also have other big guys. So this is an Andean bear, also known as a spectacled bear, although you can't really see spectacles on him. This is on one of our Dracula Reserve camera traps. It's a vulnerable species, and these large animals require large areas of land to survive and to keep their population genetics diverse. We also have small cats. This is a photo by Scott Tregeser, the executive director of the biodiversity group, another one of Ecominga's partners, of an ocelot. And so we're constantly getting ocelots on camera traps. These little cats also need large extensions of land, but we also have big cats. So this is a video just taken in February on one of our camera traps in Dracula Reserve. Huge mountain lion, big male. And we have found the same mountain lion at the northern end of Dracula Reserve, and then on camera traps all the way in the southern part of Dracula Reserve. So we know that these animals are not only living in the reserve, but also using the full extent of it, and that they're finding areas to connect the gaps between the various plots that are currently protected and the areas where we don't have a protected forest. So we have these big gaps we need to connect. And so as we explore these forests, we also are encountering all these new species, and these new species are a fantastic way to engage the public in the excitement of conservation and the idea that there are still wild places containing incredible natural secrets that are left to be discovered, left to be seen, and protected. And so this is a new species of orchid that Ekominga decided to name after the municipality of Toucan, which is the capital of the province where Dracula Reserve is located. So the scientist Marco Monteros Lucio Vaquero, who described this, named it after the town, and there's been this enormous public support of the reserve because of the pride in this orchid, which they've recommended to be listed as critically endangered. It's only known from one spot. And that spot is, while it's within the Dracula Reserve corridor, it is not protected. It is not a piece of land that that Ekominga controls. So this is an area where mining companies could determine the future of this species. Recently, our partners at the National Institute of Biodiversity, led by Jorge Brito, described a new genus of rodent with several species inside it. And this is Patonemus ekominga, named after our partners, and also recommended to be listed as critically endangered. It's only known from a single mountain, and that's after many years of intensive research. So it's known to have a very small home range. And to be able to find a new genus of mammal in this day and age is really extraordinary. So that just goes to show how little we know about this area, that we're still finding things like that. This is also a very new publication, and you can see that this lizard was published on the Ecuadorian government's official website for the Ministry of Environment. So these species are not only getting the attention of local people and of the general public, but the Ecuadorian government can also take pride in the incredible science that's coming out of their natural places. So, and then I have just two more. So this is the most recent publication. It was just published a month ago yesterday. It's 5 new species of forest mouse, and 2 of them were named after Olympic gold medalists from Ecuador, sort of national heroes. The person on the right, Richard Carapaz, lives in Toucan, and so he's a local hero as well as a national hero, and he's coming to visit the reserve soon to see the forest where his mouse lives. And so these ambassadors, these new species, are kind of the ambassadors for this endangered ecosystem. And that's why exploration is so important. It's important for us not just to protect and conserve, but to continue exploring, because that's what generates so much interest in actively conserving these areas. And this is one that, if you've seen me talk before, you will recognize, Helocyrtus conscientia, which is a frog that was named through a species naming competition that got entries from 625 young people from around the world, from 36 countries, and was just published last year. And it got attention from the Minister of Environment himself. So the minister did about a 6 or 7 minute video about this new frog, particularly excited about the interest from young people. So these animals, these species, for me, they identify this place as an area that is too precious to lose. And I'll circle back to that in a second. So part of our role, and my role, is in making sure that young people are engaged in the active conservation of this forest and the exploration. This is the team that we led in 2021 in August on a transect expedition throughout the entire Dracula Reserve corridor. We were conducting a filmmaking expedition, and this is Bella Lack on the right, who's a 19-year-old environmental advocate from the UK. And we were documenting this transect through the lens of young people who are experiencing this reserve for the first time. And our goal was to not only discover new species, look for species throughout the reserve, all the photographs you've seen in this presentation, but also to look at the threats and understand where they are and where the opportunities for further conservation in this corridor may be. This is one of the main threats. It's called naranjilla. It's a plant that uses heavy pesticide use, but it's the most popular agricultural product in the area. And I hesitate to say it's a threat without qualifying that too much, because it is a resource for local people that they rely on for their incomes. So as we work in conservation, we also need to consider alternative income sources for people that will help decrease the pressure on the landscape through plants like this that are endangering the landscape because they require so much deforestation and pesticide use to produce. The other threat is that when naranjilla, when that plant is made, it causes so much deforestation that it destabilizes the soil. And with climate change, we're seeing a massive increase in large landslides. So this landslide closed this road, which is the main road to reach Quito, to reach the capital. It closed it for 5 months. So for 5 months, anyone who wanted to go visit family or sell their goods in Quito had to drive an extra 3 hours out of the way to reach that. And that's because of deforestation and climate change. But what we found that was most concerning was gold mining exploration. So this was done illegally by an international company, whom I'm not going to name for safety reasons right now, but this is not on land they had permission to explore. And when we encountered it, it was really devastating, because it showed that these companies are emboldened by a government that wants to prioritize quick money over long-term conservation benefits. And so they are acting in a way that shows that they don't think anyone's going to stop them. And this is what they're looking for. They're looking for pyrite, or signs that there may be gold inside this mountain. This first phase of exploration, it doesn't look that bad from a photograph, but it is a portent of something much, much worse. The second phase can be extremely damaging. And these red lines are the mining concessions that were drawn by the Ecuadorian government. As you can see, they are big and boxy and not really, they're really not made anywhere other than the last remaining forest of this type of ecosystem. This is actually also encroaching on an indigenous territory to the west. It overlaps Dracula Reserve. All of this yellow stuff, all these yellow outlines, these are Dracula Reserve properties. And so it's really important now that the people who have invested in this reserve, the people who care about this reserve, are ready to speak out and to speak up for Dracula, because what we want to do is get the government to lift these mining concessions and protect this area as part of their commitment to. So that's probably my, hey, speed the heck up thing. But just want to point out, this is also a key biodiversity area. That's this red line. It's a scientific designation. And if you would like to join us in helping to conserve this area, what we're trying to do now is fund the purchase of the piece of land where we found that destruction. And we're about $250,000 shy of our mark. So I hope everyone watching today will pitch in at give.reservawildtea.org/Dracula. And this is a call by our youth council. It's much bigger than our previous project, but we all felt that it was too important for us not to commit to. So everyone at Reserva is asking for your help, for the help of everyone you know, to help us fund the purchase and protection of this piece of land, so we can ensure that no mining company gets permission to legally explore further into this incredible ecosystem. You can join as a fundraiser if you're youth, if you're 26 or younger or thereabouts. We say we're not carding. You can just donate. Think of this like a global lemonade stand where kids and youth are asking you for your $5. $5 protects about 800 square feet of forest. You can also go find one of the young people who has already started a fundraiser and go support them. This is Lorena from Brazil, a National Geographic Young Explorer, who is running her first marathon at the end of July. And you can go support people like Lorena who are putting their stories out there and putting their effort in to save this place. And if you know any young kids, young people, if you are a young person, we'd also invite you to contribute a letter. This is on our website, our Million Letters campaign. It's our answer to, hey, if you don't have money, you can still make a difference. Write a letter saying what you love about nature and why world leaders need to commit to protecting these last wild places. And we'll match it with $3, which is enough to protect 500 square feet or like a large studio or one-bedroom apartment sized area of rainforest. We'll commit that on your behalf. So please help us out, come participate, join us, and thank you for watching.
Callie, what an extraordinary presentation as always. I think I've donated money almost every time that I do a talk with you, which I'm going to run out of funds at this point, honestly. It's just, it's so inspiring and so exciting. I do want to stress again, you highlighted all your email ways of contacting you, but reservaylt.org on all social media platforms, specifically the Dracula Youth Reserve. You can learn even more than we had the chance to talk about in today's program, and you're doing such incredible stuff. Your photography, I want to harp on for a minute, because more than almost any other person we've had on over the whole BioFest, and I've hosted a lot of people so far, you have the most extraordinary pictures of animals, and they're all your shots. You even do this thing with like the white background, which I've only ever seen in the photo art project. So if our other conservationists that are joining us for their projects around the world wanted to get started with that, what has been the impact that you've seen with these really charismatic photos of the wildlife you're trying to save?
Thanks, first of all. That's a really kind thing to say. So my photography, I focus on getting facial expressions from animals. I want people to feel like they're meeting the animal. That's something that came from my time at National Geographic Kids. You can see behind me, I worked at Nat Geo Kids for 7 years, and our strategy was always to have eye contact with the viewer. And it showed with kids that they connected so much more with animals that they were looking at into the eyes than just like a cool photo graphically. So that's always my focus when I photograph. And as far as the white background goes, I just use printer paper. I use Write in the Rain printer paper. If you can find little like a softbox or something that has white edges so you get some light bouncing, fantastic. But I use a single diffused flash and literally printer paper.
Cool. I'm going to rewatch all of this after the fact as I keep harping through at the BioFest. All these are recorded, so next time I go and field in any fashion, I'll do that exact thing. Callie, you highlighted at the end all these amazing ways in which you're getting youth involved. So the Run for Rainforest, you've done. Yes, well, you had a person who was running, but tell us about Run for Rainforest. We'll stick with that as the last question.
Run for the Rainforest we've done now 2 times, and today we announced that we are going to be running it a 3rd time. This time we're going to be doing Run for the Rainforest, which is a global virtual 5K run, walk, paddleboard, cycle, wheelchair, whatever it is, however you want to participate. We have like a really fun little runner's pack that comes with a printout runner's bib and a medal. You can kind of DIY, make it yourself. And we're going to be running for the rainforest on June 22nd, which is World Rainforest Day, and for the rest of June. But the pre-registration is going to open super soon, as soon as I get that webpage up. But we just announced today that we're going to be doing it. So
congrats to you. I'm so excited to share that. And again, if any of our folks that are tuning in want to learn more about that, want to register when it comes on, your website, it'll live there. People can check it out in your social media. I'm going to be moving across Canada right around that time, but maybe instead of driving, I'll just run the whole way there, and that'll help your efforts that much further. Callie, this has been so much fun. Again, it's always such a pleasure having you. You do such incredible work online that people can follow in a wide variety of formats, but I just want to say a huge thanks and congrats again for everything. You're an inspiration to us all.
Thanks very much. I'm really stoked to stay on for your next guest. I
Stay
see her.
on.
I see her in the back room, and
She's coming in about an hour. We've got Ollie first, who's going to be blowing our minds at Eden Pride.
Okay.
Hang out in the background with us. We love having more people here. So, Callie, thanks so much again for keeping our BioFest rolling, and keep up the amazing work.
Of course.